Welcome again to Conference USA Roundtable. I'm Ron THULIN. Today we're going to get a different perspective of what the athletes of Conference USA are going through. We're going to be talking about a number of issues, including what athletes go through during a normal season, but more specifically, what they're going through now during this COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us is Dr. Donna Thomas. She is the chair of the Louisiana Tech Department of Psychology and Behavioral Science. Also joining us, Dean Miller. He is from Rice, assistant AD and sports medicine athletic trainer, and Dr. Michael Shaffer, over 40 years of experience in the healthcare industry, currently the team physician for North Texas. First of all, welcome all of you. This is a unique perspective, and I think it's something that athletes and even administrators hopefully will get something out of. And Dr. Thomas, I want to start with you. May is Mental Health Month, so it seems appropriate that we are talking about this. Even without this, let's go back to just a normal season. Athletes are under a lot of stress, are they not?
They are, yes. Athletes are under a lot of stress. All students, I think, are under a lot of stress. But there is some added difficulty, I think, for student athletes because of their schedules, because of the various things they have to pay attention to. The pressure on them, of course, as student athletes, the performance pressure, not to mention the academic pressure. Because they are so busy, it makes it really difficult for them to keep up with everything. So even during good times, we see that student athletes are really stressed.
Dina, I want to turn to you from an athletic trainer standpoint, because you've been doing this an awful long time. We've seen how emotions, thoughts, and even behaviors can impact the recovery from sports injury. Is that pretty much right on fact?
Well, yeah, no doubt. Just what Dr. Thomas talked about with that increased stress and pressure and what they're up against, any kind of emotional complication can definitely slow things down from that perspective. And I think that, getting to know your athletes is such a key factor. It's not all about the injury or the body part. I think it's more getting in tune about who they are, what they're all about. I know that I try very much to try and get involved with their families, how it's going every day. And we have a staff of 14 individuals. And I say the first thing coming out of your mouth when you see your student athlete is, how's class today? How are you doing? How's things at home? So I think getting that contained perspective to someone and making them feel confident in you will help them relieve some of that stress.
Dr. Shaffer, when all of us got together last week, we were talking about just this and the relationship that you have with your athletes at North Texas and how much you miss that. But you also had a unique experience. You were at the Conference USA basketball tournament when it all shut down. Games were canceled. From your standpoint, how difficult was that for you? And also, did you try to help the athletes through that time?
Well, it was very difficult. First off, much like everybody that was there, we've never experienced anything like that. It was a very new thing for all of us. It required a lot of meetings with administration from Conference USA, the athletic directors from each of the schools, some coaches discussions, and it was like meetings happened very rapidly. I would be found courtside and say, we need to go talk about this and get updates. I was checking with local health department, getting information. So it was very stressful on all of us as staff to have to think about coming to that point of canceling the tournament. After the tournament was over, I spent time with our athletes. They were, very upset, very saddened with the fact that having completed, winning the conference in the regular season and looking forward to the tournament, that their hopes were dashed. That potential of being able to move on yet to the NCAA tournament was very saddening to them. So it was a big stressor. And then coming back to the university after, all of that had finished, talking with them and working with them. I did not have an opportunity to meet with some of the other teams. I met with all the trainers as they came into the tournament, tried to introduce myself, let them know that I was there. And if I needed to do anything for them, if they didn't have a physician with them, I was their doc for the game and stayed in close contact with all of them as best I could.
I want all of you to weigh in on this, because I did a lot of research over the weekend and I heard a lot of athletes talking about this. Anxiety is a big part of college life, especially if you're a student athlete trying to juggle home life, trying to juggle books, your athletic schedule. Now all of a sudden your structure is gone. And all of a sudden there's this uncertainty for athletes that are normally everything's right in a row. Dr. Thomas, I want to start with you. Talk about that, the anxiety that they are now going through without that structure.
Well, anxiety is uncertainty, right? I mean, they're almost synonymous. The reason that people often are anxious is because they don't know what comes next and they fear what comes next. We're in a time right now where a lot of us, or most of us, can't predict what comes next in life in general, regardless of in college athletics. And so I think that what they're facing is normal. It's something that a lot of us are having to face, but it's unique. Also, it's not typical, and it's not typical for them because they are accustomed to, at least in their athletic performance and in their competitions, being able to make some predictions about themselves, about their own performance, about how things will go. Often their statistics will tell you pretty much what you can expect from one time to the next, but right now they're outside of that realm and they really don't know what to expect. So like a lot of us, they are feeling anxious. There's a lot of support for that on campuses and off campuses. So I'm happy to be able to report that, but I think that it's important that those of us who work within college athletics let our student athletes know that there is a lot of support out there for them right now and how they can access those resources.
Dean, your perspective on all of that.
Well, geez, I agree so much again with Dr. Thomas. I think it's a little bit about that magic trick or that so-called ability to kind of pull the tablecloth out from underneath all the dishes on the table, and all of a sudden you've got this, abnormal anxiety going on. It's not normal because this is something that none of us have ever experienced. I mean, Dr. Shaffer talks about his perspective of it, and I'm sure Dr. Davis feels the same. This is a little different, and you're trying to maneuver it with the personalities of those around you and what they are. I think even for us, sometimes it's hard to pick up those pieces and evaluate in your head. We know what we're going through at home, and it's a shock for us. What are these kids going through? What are their parents going through? And what is it like when all of a sudden you've got this great opportunity to be in the conference tournament and then boom, it's over? And I think we talk a lot about how we face and take a look at our anxiety every day, and not only that, but our adversity that comes along. But this was so unique in its perspective, and I think we all talk about the new normal, okay? I think the anxiety level, the word anxiety has also changed. I think those definitions are not really complete yet. So I think we're going to know a whole lot here in the next 5 to 6 weeks, then leading into the first 3 months of hopefully getting back to school.
Dr. Shaffer, your perspective.
Well, when I look at these young men and women have had structure in their lives prior to basically mid-March, and they've done a little bit of their own thing, even though they've been under restrictions. Coming back, we're going to provide structure, but those returners had a previous known structure. This is going to be even more structured with any of the screenings that we have to do to participate in all the things we need to do related to the COVID-19 virus. So how are they going to react to that? And as we get them back to training, their expectation is we're training because we're going to have a season coming up. And depending on how we get spikes in the virus, that may change that landscape in a few months after return. And we could end up not having certain sporting events. So we're going to have a whole nother wave of levels of anxiety and even some depression at that point that we'll have to address. I'm nervous about our athletes coming back and kind of where they are mentally. The good thing is, I think for us, being able to share our own personal stressors as well, that we're anxious and nervous about this as well. And we work through it together because we've always done it as a team.
One of the things that stands out when I saw some of these athletes around the country talking about it, they're trying to stay in shape the best they can. But when it comes to working out and getting the exercise, there's no competition. And Dean, I want to start with you because you talked about it on Friday. You got somebody next to you who's doing reps, and you're pushing the person next to you who's pushing the person next to them. Working out is great now, solo, but it isn't the same.
No, there's that isolation out there right now. You're not seeing what your competitors are doing and your teammates at the same time. You're trying to compete for a space for playing time and other issues. So sometimes that drive of that individual next to you gives you that extra push, that extra heartbeat, so to speak, to make that next repetition or make that happen. I think in the world out there now, there's a lot of unknown. You don't see what there's could be some of them out there that aren't doing much, and there's others who are going, man, I've got to work really hard. This is my chance. I have to figure that out. So the entire psychosis of that athlete and how hard they want to work physically to come back will be a whole lot different. I also think there's going to be a measurement to the team coming back and where that camaraderie and how those team cultures are going to be built. We just talked about it this morning. I don't think we'll be doing too many high fives and not a lot of handshakes and fist bumping and that sort of a perspective. So there's going to be a new dynamic. I would anticipate there's probably going to be some new types of end zone dancing and some preliminary understandings of what we do with social distancing and the like. So all I know out there, some of the athletes I've talked to, they're very competitive right now. They're all over it. Many of them now have finished their finals, and they're starting to talk about, what do I need to do now? Can I get back? So a real interesting paradox, actually. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how that all plays itself out as well.
I heard this, and I want you all to weigh in on it, about what we should ask the athletes. And I think all of you have touched on it, saying, how are you doing? Don't go up to them and say, you doing okay? You know how coaches used to do that? Hey, you doing okay today? Really ask them, how are you doing? And stand there and wait for a response. Dr. Thomas, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. Asking that open-ended question makes it easier for them to be able to share how they actually are doing. It's a tendency for a lot of us. I can recall when my kids were young and they'd be sick, but they'd be home from school or something, and I'm wanting them to go back to school. So I'd ask them things like, how you feeling, buddy? You doing okay today? And just sort of insinuating to them that they should be feeling a certain way and influencing them really in that. And I think that same thing can happen with student athletes and any students. If we're trying to basically tell them that they should be okay, that's not going to make them feel welcome to tell us how they're really feeling if they're not okay. So I think that open-ended question is a great one. Just how are you? How are things going?
Dr. Shaffer, your response to that?
I agree. It's the open-ended questions. It's something that I've learned through my nursing career as well as my physician career. You get more information when you open those doors. One thing I've learned through my years in sports medicine is there's certain terms that different groups use. Good is a term that reaches out to some of my players to get them thinking that I'm thinking about their mental health, not just are you physically good, what's going on, but really reaching out to them, connecting with them, and getting them to open up is going to be very important for us. And kind of reestablishing those relationships that we had previously are super important.
And Dean, I've been around so many trainers, in my 40 plus years career. And I've always noticed the trainers ask those in-depth questions, not, are you doing okay? You really look them right in the eye, because you're trying to get a sense physically how they're doing, but also mentally.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at how an athletic trainer works about the total health of the individual, and I guess total body involvement, total mind involvement is a very interesting structure in itself. And, I talked to one of our players yesterday from Los Angeles, and it was better for me to get on early and find out what the weather was like in Los Angeles. It was about 78 degrees in the morning yesterday. Sun's coming up. How's it going in California? Have you been to the beach at all? Have you had a chance? You're trying to ask different questions, kind of relate exactly where they are and what happened, so that maybe they'll speak a little bit to you. And interestingly enough, we talked for about 15 minutes. He had a lot of questions on his mind, and he was, let's get off California. When can I get back to Houston, Texas? When's school going to open up? What you guys doing there to get me back? So it kind of drew out his enthusiasm that you're going a little bit deeper of trying to find out a little bit more about that athlete. And, like I said, we deal with so many body parts that it becomes very, very interesting to find out about their so-called, physiological intelligence as well when you're dealing with the body, but that mental aspect is so key.
Do all of you have to be gatekeepers? In other words, you've got to be attuned to everything that's going on and making sure these athletes are okay. And Dr. Shaffer, I'll start with you on this one.
Well, at a certain level, I think we are. When I look at our athletes coming back, I have to think about their mental health. I have to think about their physical health. Where are they? We're going through heat changes now. So where's our acclimatization with what we're doing related to football? When I look at cross-country runners, their sport is social distancing. Those guys are out running, they run by themselves. So they may not have some of the effects that some of our other players have. Yes, they're part of a team, but they're probably in better shape than any of our athletes coming back on campus. I think gatekeepers that's a harsh word. That's a tough word, but I think we've all got to work together because I can't always be there. So we have to have a chain of people that can follow through on making sure that we're crossing our T's, we're dotting our I's, and we're getting them to understand how important it is to do what we're doing and how it's going to play into their academic health as well as their physical and sports related health moving forward.
Dr. Thomas?
No, before I worked with student athletes, I really had no idea about the relationship between a student athlete and sports medicine staff and trainers. I just hadn't given it much thought. But what I've seen, I'm the NCAA faculty athletics rep here at Louisiana Tech. And so that is, my charge is sort of related to student athlete well-being and then of course academic integrity as well. But the well-being part, the thing that I've learned, and it's been such a comfort for me, is that the trainers and the sports medicine staff are often the first line of defense for these student athletes. And when they say the total person and the total athlete, they really see and hear it all. And I'm just really grateful that they're there. I think they build those relationships with our students so that the students are comfortable talking to them. And a lot of times, even though, of course, I'm a mental health professional, but as the athletic rep, I can't work with student athletes in that way as far as directly as their mental health professional. But a lot of times the trainers will let me know, or the sports medicine staff will let me know that there are things going on with student athletes and ask me to help make referrals and those kinds of things. So I'm just really grateful that those two guys, Dean and Dr. Shaffer, and people like them are there to do that.
Dean, I would second, and Dr. Shaffer second and triple that. Dean, your comment on that of just the fact that, and you touched on it briefly, that you've got to be aware of so many things. People just think you tape ankles. And I've tried to tell people that's not the case. You're almost, kind of a father, a mentor, and everything else rolled into one.
Well, you started with the word gatekeeper. Sometimes I feel like I'm a bouncer at the bar. You're deciding which steer is going to go on which chute, who's going to get branded and where that's going to go. And I'm sure Dr. Shaffer understands that. We're going to have a lot of athletes coming back that are going to be in different physical, behavioral perspectives. And we'll probably be doing a lot of gatekeeping at that time period. But yeah, you let a few in the door of the bar, and then all of a sudden you're the DJ. You're running some music for them, and then you're over there. You're the bartender. It sounds like it's really crazy, but that's kind of the mentality. You're shifting from nutrition to mental health to the physical activity level of it. You're trying to deal with their emotions and some of the other things going on. It's, you're never bored. I think I mentioned to you on Friday, I feel sometimes like, you're, that famous show Pawn Stars, I never know what's going to come in the door. And I think that's what keeps it very interesting every day, because I'm sure not bored when that comes to it. So yeah, we're definitely gatekeeping, but at the same time, hopefully we are, like I said, direct them in the proper chutes at the right time, whether that be to someone like Dr. Shaffer or Dr. Davis that understands exactly where that at. And if you don't have a team of colleagues out there in sports medicine, you can't operate today. From an orthopedic surgeon to a gynecologist, psychologist, gen med people, it just goes, the list is massive. So it's about those relationships we can build as well so that we can cement those connections.
Dr. Thomas, this is going to be for you, I think specifically, if there are parents watching now and even athletes watching, maybe coaches watching, what are the signs that should kind of perk up our interest you see in an athlete that you might say, you know what, we need to get into this a little bit more? What would be the most outward signs?
Well, the simple answer is anything that's atypical for them, right? We would look at signs of depression and anxiety. We think about typical human behaviors like how much we sleep or how much we eat or how much time we spend with other people or whether we're happy or sad. The tricky part is that that's not the same for everyone that may be having difficulties. Some people may eat more than usual. Some people may eat less than usual. Some people may sleep more than usual. Some may sleep less than usual. But paying attention to changes in people's behavior is the most important thing. And that's where, you know, the parents who know them so well and probably right now are spending a lot more time with them than usual during this time of year, can really notice that something might be going on with their young men and young women, and also the trainers and the sports medicine staff will notice that when they have more time with them, because just anything that seems unusual for them, and it doesn't have to be really, it doesn't have to seem really serious. If you notice that they're spending more time away from people, they're spending more time, you know, in their bedrooms or isolated, or suddenly maybe they're much more animated and maybe they're spending a lot more time doing activities that they didn't before. Of course, substance use, those kinds of things, if you see someone engaging in more of that. So really just looking for things that are atypical for the kids is going to be key.
Dr. Shaffer, you mentioned that you had a nursing career before you became a physician. So you have seen a wide range of emotions and a wide range of adversity people go through, which I think gives you a very unique perspective, because you've seen people having to deal with adversity from both sides, as a nurse and as a physician.
You know, I have. Most of my nursing career was emergency room, ICU, trauma. And so I spent a lot of time with my patients, but also with their families. And when you spend hours after hour after hour with these people, you start getting clues. You find consistencies from one family to the next, from different ages, from different sexes, different ethnic backgrounds. So when I've been able to pick up on some of those things just historically, and it's kind of carried into my physician career. I'm very pleased that I've been able to do this. It's you know, being able to talk with someone, and I can continue to talk with them about their mental health while I'm looking in their ears and looking in their eyes, looking in their throat, or listening to their heart. It's kind of that distracting thing, almost like with Dean and taping an ankle, or the hairdresser or the bartender. You know, it's an activity that we do that kind of separates their mind and lets them open up a little bit more emotionally. And I think that's one thing that I've gained through my career, on trying to key in on those things, pick up on those clues, those red flags, and then getting them to expand on it with good open questions, and really initially working on building that trust so they'll trust to open up to you.
Dean, you've worked with numerous Olympic athletes that are very high stressed at times, and in my career, getting to know them. But again, it comes down to the relationship that you have with that athlete. But is that difficult during this time? Because luckily we have the technology like we're doing today, but still it doesn't substitute being the one-on-one with your athletes, does it not?
No, it certainly doesn't. And I think at the stage of competition or preparation for competition, you know, understanding that interpersonal relationship is really important, probably for them and for others. I think that the level of athletic ability in transition is so different from sport to sport, and probably from high school to college and the professional to the Olympic ranks. And that's kind of an interesting perspective in itself. Probably from a point of anxiety, from performance anxiety in other areas, the Olympians and those other people, even though they have it, they're at such a level, sometimes that's where they really drive themselves, right? They can probably block out anything, and that performance is what sets them free. And that's what's really unique about that professional, those at that really, really high level. And there's a lot of collegiate athletes like that as well. And they can have problems and complications, but those who aren't able to structure themselves and be able to pull it all in and be able to deal with those anxieties and create some separation points for themselves from performance, handling school, handling everyday life, maybe a relationship, and then boom, now I got to go perform again. You generally find that those who can block those things out in individually related times are going to be much, much more efficient. And I don't think necessarily that matters so much, because sometimes the successes you read are not the gold medals. Sometimes the successes are that situation just to get to the point where it is about the gold medal that you think you're going to win. And a lot of personal bests are done at a time period when sometimes no one ever wins a medal. But that personal best is really what they were actually striving for in the first place.
Dr. Thomas, athletes are no stranger to adversity. if some athlete right now watching is feeling a little depressed, is it good to remind them how they've overcome adversity and maybe down times in their life to show them that they can do it again?
Sure, sure. I mean, that's one of the things that we do a lot in mental health is remind people of the successes that they've had. And because oftentimes when people are feeling depressed or they're feeling anxious, they're focusing on all the negative. And you hear words like never and always, and I never feel good, I always feel bad, and just reminding them of the successes that they've had in the past and the times that they've been able to overcome things can bring a lot of hope. Depression is a lot about hopelessness and helplessness. But when you help people realize that they're not helpless and that they're not hopeless, that there is hope, and particularly looking at their previous successes is a really good way to do that.
And Dr. Shaffer, one of the quotes I read over the weekend, isolation does not mean you're alone.
That's very true. I think with kids these days, they are so connected outside of being next to another body. They're texting somebody, they're watching videos. They have a lot of connection. But again, there's something about, a sit down talk with someone that really feeds their soul. And I think taking advantage, I've done a lot of telehealth visits with all of this, and I've been able to chat with my patients and look at them and say, hey, you look good, your color's good, those kinds of things. I think if we get stretched out at any point in time, we can reach out to our athletes and utilize these platforms to remind them that they're not isolated. They really have a great network out there of trainers, physicians, other healthcare providers that care about them and are interested in who they are, what they're doing, and how we can help them get through all this. We just have to give them that phone a friend of sorts attitude.
The one thing that stands out, and Dean, you touched on it on Friday, which it really stuck in my mind, what Conference USA is doing. You, along with Dr. Thomas, Dr. Shaffer, and hundreds of others around Conference USA, you're preparing for what might happen. And you were talking about the different scenarios. I think you said you had a 75-page report of what happens if this happens, if this happens. And I commend all of you for doing that, because we've got to be prepared that if this starts up again in the near future.
Yeah, I think you can focus on the actual disease, and the more you focus on it, you're not going to find the so-called healing points or the transition medicines that we need individually to get going in preparation. We know the basic keys, what the CDC's put out there for hand washing, taking care of yourself. We know the masking implications and where those are for individuals today, the social distancing. Those are all on the keys that we all probably pretty much aware of, that you want to remind them. But I think the other thing is you need to remind yourself about the so-called nuances of each. The individuals are going to be different. They're going to be a little bit staged, and they're going to be incomplete coming back. No one's going to be the full-on athlete that's going to be able to act like they have before. So I can only say that the Conference USA athletic trainers, which is a group of people that I chair, what a phenomenal group. And I think each of us, when we're looking at 14 institutions over 9 states, with the multiplicity and the multidisciplines and the diverse situations and programming we have, it's so exciting to listen to, Kevin O'Neill, and I could probably hear his voice as opposed to listening to him earlier, which was, hey, Dade County today is going to open up a little bit. We're going to start some things. Well, we did that in Texas almost 3 weeks ago, right? So they're excited about those transitions. So for us, it's a teamwork and an energy of sharing information and processes as they go along. And I think that's really unique, that some of us are going to be starting up earlier than others, and some of us can learn from the lessons and the mistakes they make in the other directions. It's going to be I'll tell you what a great group of people we have. And I know Dr. Shaffer will be on a call this evening. All the Conference USA physicians that can make on the call tonight will be involved, and we'll talk about it from the physicians' perspectives in each one of those locations. So, man, talk about some phenomenal people. It's crazy to see how many great professionals there are out there.
And we are lucky to have 3 of them right here. And Dr. Thomas, final word. You're excited, obviously, to get the students back and the athletes back. And you're probably going to put a positive spin on just about everything we possibly can, but you still have to be aware, correct?
Sure. I mean, there are things that we need to be concerned about. I mean, I think from the mental health aspect, one of my biggest concerns, and I mentioned it earlier, is just being sure that the student athletes know that we're here for them, that there are resources available. You know, there's a stigma still attached to mental health. And people often don't seek help when they need it. And I actually had a student athlete a couple of years ago who came to talk to me here in my office, who made a comment like, you know, he said he was struggling with some things, and so I suggested that he go to the University Counseling Center. And his response was, well, I bet no student athletes go there. I don't know if I'd be comfortable going there. You know, of course, I couldn't name names for him, but I let him know that it's not uncommon at all for student athletes to reach out for help, and that they should. And it really came as a surprise to him. And I see that a lot with student athletes, that they just don't feel they're in an environment where they are supposed to be here all the time, or that's the way they feel. And so it feels perhaps like weakness if they have some sort of difficulty or some kind of struggle. So I want to be sure that they know what's available to them. And I know the conference has had a really strong mental health initiative for the last couple of years, and on our campuses we've had that as an extension of that. And so that's really going to be a big focus for me, is just being sure that they know that we're here for them.
Final thought from you, Dr. Shaffer, about what we're about to enter a new era, hopefully a good one, a positive one, but your final thoughts.
Yeah, we've already been affected by something that no one has seen for 100 years, and we're now getting ready to make plans to try to get ourselves back to this new normal. It's going to take a lot of work for all of us. The term that's been reiterated over and over again is we're all in this together, and we are. It's reassuring the athletes that we're there to help them in any way they can, keep them healthy and safe, help guide them through this acclimatization to this new normal for them, because this is a new way of them participating in their sport, no matter what it is. So, and it's a new way for us to help them participate in their sport. So I think, you know, as our excitement of bringing them back on campus and helping them is super exciting for us, but it is rather nerve-wracking because, as Dean alluded to earlier, we never know what curveball is going to come at us next. And it can happen in a day, a week, or a month, but we have to be always thinking about that, because we'll have to respond to our athletes with whatever that news or plan or change is in their lives.
Dean, final thought from you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ron, I think that the best part for all of us here to realize is having this kind of a format for us to be able to get out there and speak to everyone who may not be speaking the same language we do. Because I'm an athletic training. Dr. Davis is indeed in the psychology world and does a very great job at that. Dr. Shaffer, the same from a medical perspective. And so our viewpoints are a little bit different. And I'm not saying we all have the right answers or the wrong answers, and sometimes it's both, right? And I think it's going to be very, very exciting to jump into this new normal. But I will say this, that I think that I feel very, very confident that Conference USA and all of our plans and our unity together as a group and how seriously we're taking this is hopefully going to make it a little bit easier to find the key to get through that door. So yeah, let's find that key under the rock and open the doors.
Dean Miller? Yes, go ahead. Dr.
Can I
Thomas.
add something to that? One of the things that I've thought throughout today's visit and the other day when we visited was that, you know, I guess I'm the psychologist here, but listening to Dean and listening to Dr. Shaffer, it's just so encouraging to know and to be reminded that our students are surrounded by so many people who care about them. And really, I mean, I feel like we're all mental health professionals on this call, because it's almost like we're speaking the same language, just coming from a little different aspect. So that's really nice to hear.
I tell you, you all have done an incredible job. And just the fact that you're there for the students, and any student athlete that may be watching this, please, if you have something to talk about, contact your school, your trainer, your team doctor, and get the help that you need. There's nothing wrong with it, because all of us at times we need to reach up and say, I need a little help. Give me a boost. Dr. Thomas, thank you so much. Dean, thank you. Dr. Shaffer, thank you. Outstanding professionals, and thanks especially to Conference USA for allowing us to have this roundtable today.
Thank you.
Thank you.